You're not going to come up short and say, oh, you know what? Now that I've really looked at it, I realized nothing's there. No, you're going to come back and say, wow, what's there is more than I can explain and more than most people are ever going to believe, because there's more than one civilization, and that entire part of the world, like most of the earth, is a beehive. It's a honeycomb, cavern after cavern, and it goes miles down. It's a whole nother world, or two or three. Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Checho, and today we are doing a special edition of Far Out with Faust, the Antarctica edition. I'm going to be unveiling a lot of research that I've been putting together for you guys, and try to compile it in a way that paints you a full picture of the last, 200 years and beyond of Antarctica, why no one's allowed to fly over it, and what's really underneath the ice. I'm going to do the best I can. Thank you guys so much for beaming in with me. If you are not a subscriber, by God, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button so you know when we publish new videos, which we do daily. We have 2 new series coming out and a lot of exciting content. So a lot of you who are listening are not subscribed. Please subscribe. You won't regret it. And since we are at the top of the program and skeptics who may be joining have not tuned out yet, let me just hit you with this. Latest science confirms conditions for life under the ice already present. So this notion that there can be no life, I'm about to dispel it, because ice or not, the conditions are there and they've been there. So before we proceed, let me just also make a note of this for our listeners. It's worth pointing out that circumstantial evidence is admissible in courts of law where direct evidence is lacking. Circumstantial evidence, together with direct eyewitness testimony, is sufficient to convince juries of something to be true or false, guilty or innocent in legal cases. So it's important to consider this type of evidence in relation to the claims of the whistleblowers that are going to be presented in this video. But back to the science. Now, 2017, Australian and New Zealand scientists discovered that the existence of large natural caverns in Antarctica are present, thermally heated by adjacent volcanoes. It was found that the temperature in the caverns could be a balmy 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Celsius for my European brethren and sisters. And this would support, obviously, a massive variety of life forms. Report was in Business Insider Australia, and they wrote about the scientists' findings, which remarkable. You would have thought that it made bigger news, as it kind of rewrites our geographical understanding of the entire planet. But it went under the radar, like most things in Antarctica. Okay. I'm going to sum it up for you a little bit. You can always read the article yourself, 2017, in the Australian Business Insider. But the findings are around Mount Erebus, an active volcano on Ross Island in Antarctica, steam has hollowed out extensive cave systems, their radar findings found. Dr. Sarah Fraser from the ANU, that's the Australian National University, Fenner School of Environment and Society, says that forensic analysis of soil samples from these caves have revealed intriguing traces of DNA from algae, mosses, and small animals. I quote, "It can be really warm inside the caves, up to 25 degrees Celsius in some caves," Fraser says. "The results from this study give us a tantalizing glimpse of what might live beneath the ice in Antarctica. There might even be a new species of animals and plants," she says. If only she knew. Wow. The existence of extensive networks of mysterious underground caverns heated by nearby volcanoes is further strengthened by another recent scientific finding. In August, scientists released a study revealing the discovery of 91 new volcanoes, in addition to the 41 that had been previously found. 91, thereby forming the world's most active volcanic region. That is, let me repeat that. The world's most active volcanic region is in Antarctica, deep under Antarctica's ice sheets. A reporter with the Guardian newspaper, Robert McKee, wrote that scientists have uncovered the largest volcanic region on Earth, 2 kilometers below the surface of the vast ice sheets that cover West Antarctica. The project by Edinburgh University researchers have revealed almost 100 volcanoes, with the highest as tall as the Eiger, which stands at almost 4,000 meters in Switzerland. After the team had collated the results, it reported a staggering 91 previously unknown volcanoes, adding to the 47 that had been discovered. Wow, that is unbelievable, I think. Extensive natural cave systems already beneath Antarctica. Wow. What does that tell you about what's there? So this notion that, the Germans who were going there, were venturing into the great unknown. It wasn't the great unknown. It was never the great unknown. And they were made aware of that. There has been life there for a long time. We can only speculate how long. But so I just wanted to lead with that so that you skeptics out there can begin to understand that things are not always what they seem. And to dismiss things outright before you have all the knowledge, before you could have all the knowledge, is folly. So, that being said, I want to get into the events leading up to World War II and why the Germans took such an incredible interest in Antarctica. And that's not up for debate or dispute. That's a fact. Okay. The Germans had, and some will argue have, although it now has an American flag in it. But the Germans had a base in Antarctica, and the expeditions that they sent there predated World War II. But let's talk about, how did the Germans know to even look in Antarctica? We have to start with the Thule Society, okay? The German Workers' Party was renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party, on February 24th, 1920, all right? Thule Society leaders. Now, this was the creme de la creme, if you will, of the society in Germany, meaning a lot of the money that was organic in Germany was part of this society, this Thule Society. And they believed that they could control this new workers' party, the Nazi Party, from behind the scenes by creating a German nation that was based on metaphysical principles. This was all out of the ashes of World War I, the defeat of World War I, okay? The emblem of the Thule Society was a version of the swastika that was eventually adopted and twisted by Hitler and the Nazi Party. As you'll see, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, you'll be able to see that video. If not, you'll just have to Google it, I guess, for my listeners. So, continuing on. The Thule Society believed in the existence of an advanced northern subterranean civilization called Hyperborea. Now, that may sound familiar. That's also part of Greek myth. It's described in Greek and Roman legends. But legends come from somewhere, my friends. So, what is Hyperborea? It's an ancient capital, and it was Ultima, UL-TIMA, Thule. Thule Society members believed that they were the creators of the Aryan race. The Hyperborean civilization could harness what was called vril energy, which is essential for the use of futuristic technologies that were originally created by these ancient civilizations. This is what the Thule Society, the money in Germany, believed, and they were willing to put their money where their mouth is. Thule Society members believed that these advanced technologies were hidden in various locations around the world. Now, Why the hell would they think that? Well, there's a lot of reasons why they would think that. But as I said, they were willing to put their money where their mouth is. Now, the well-equipped Nazi expeditions to the Antarctica in the pre-war period allowed the Nazis to familiarize themselves with the terrain there. Okay, now what's the basis for that claim? I'll tell you. Let's go back to the records that Germans began moving equipment and supplies to Antarctica as early as 1913. This is not hearsay. Okay, these claims coincide with historical records of the Second German Antarctic expedition from 1911 to 1913, which was led by Wilhelm Filchner. And this period also corresponds with the increasing role of German secret societies in exploring remote global locations for occult knowledge. These are facts. This is history. This is not theory. This is not me just talking to hear myself talk. Everything I'm telling you is well documented and on record. The most ambitious of these expeditions, a Nazi expedition, occurred in 1938 and 1939. Now, the U.S., by the way, was well aware of and very, very curious and eventually very concerned about what Germany had this fetish about Antarctica for. We were trying to figure it out. We did not want them making a claim to that land. And you're going to see what we did in response. So the most ambitious Nazi expedition. This occurred in 1938, 1939, when extensive portions of Antarctica were claimed by Captain Alfred Richter. God, all these German names. And he claimed it for the Nazis. The aircraft carrier, the Schwabenland, sent planes to perform extensive aerial surveillance of the region claimed by Nazi Germany, which was called New Schwabenland. Among the goals of the Schwabenland expedition was the establishment of several bases in Antarctica. Fact. Okay? That was in 1938 and 1939. They had already been going there, which you're about to see. They didn't just decide and go up there into the ice unprepared. They had been making preparations for this for 20 years. In fact, the establishment of Nazi Antarctic bases became a cause for concern for President Roosevelt, who gave orders for a military expedition to challenge the Nazi presence in parts of Antarctica that he deemed to be part of the Western Hemisphere. This is an article from the New York Times, reported on July 7th, 1939. For those people watching on YouTube and Rumble, you'll be able to see an image of this, and I'll read it to the rest of my listeners. President Roosevelt moved today to prevent possible extension of Germany's claims to Antarctic areas into the Western Hemisphere by directing Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd to leave in October to territory within the sphere of influence of the Monroe Doctrine. Now, that makes it pretty clear that the United States government was ready to take action and put themselves in position, if necessary, to thwart these attempts. They were concerned, this is a fact, about Antarctica. What? Why? What was Germany doing there? Okay, so the article continues. It's apparent that this government, referring to Roosevelt's, was prepared to take the position, if necessary, that any attempts by foreign powers to establish bases west of the 180th meridian in Antarctic would be considered an unfriendly act. Why would the New York Times put that article in the paper on July 7th, 1939, if nothing was going on in Antarctica? Listen, it wasn't about having a strategic position, okay? There's a lot of strategic positions, and all of them are closer than Antarctica. Listen, during the war itself, okay, the United States, we monitored extensive submarine activity in the region of Antarctica, suggested that the Nazis were building bases in addition to what Captain Reichster's expedition had established. Such a possibility was fueled by a comment made by the commander of the Nazi Germany's submarine fleet. His name was Admiral Karl Donitz in 1943. He claimed on record that his fleet had built, and I quote, in another part of the world, a Shangri-La land, an impregnable fortress. He was very proud and very defiant. So we're going to go back through this, but after Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8th, 1945, Nazi submarine activity in the Antarctic region continued just as before. What? So it was going on before the war and continued right on through after the war. Do you understand? We have radar records to prove this. And we knew what they were doing, which is why we did what we did. And you're about to learn more about that. Operation High Jump. Hello. So, a little bit of evidence to back up that claim. After Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8th, 1945, Nazi submarine activity in the Antarctic region continued, as evidenced by the following report by the, my French is as bad as my German, by the Agence France Presse on September 25th, 1946. I quote, the continuous rumors about German U-boat activity in the region of Tierra del Fuego, or Fierland in German, between the southernmost tip of Latin America and the continent of Antarctica are based on true happenings. So, speaking of submarines and maps and what was going on, I want to share my screen with you guys and go over some of these incredible documents that surfaced and that were recovered. Here's a map of New Schwabenland, German map, 1941, showing the pole and which way they were coming in. Now, you guys, I know what you're thinking. Oh, those maps look great, but this is where they came from. Okay, just so you understand it, these were recovered. What you just saw was a digital representation and a recreation of it, but this is where they came from. Okay, real paper. Real maps from the Germans in German. Okay, this has been translated from the roll of, it looks like a giant scroll of papers, but that roll of old paper that you saw, this is translated from and this is directions for their submarines, how to get into their Antarctica base. Okay. And I'll leave these up on the screen for a while. But these were recovered. This is a translation, okay? I'm going to show you the original documents. This is the original document in German with the instructions. What you just saw before that was the translation. So, also, now, as I mentioned, testimony, whistleblower testimony. I want to talk to you guys about a whistleblower who went by the name of Stein and also Cooper, Kewper, former CIA whistleblower. And we're going to hear his voice directly. This is CIA whistleblower testimony to the one and only Linda Moulton Howe, who is probably the most respected investigative journalist on UFOs for whistleblowers to ever live. Okay. She's been doing this a long time and she is the gold standard. She is the one who everyone goes to. She has been absolutely relentless in her willingness to put forth this information, regardless of what people think, because she knows that the government's been hiding a lot of things about extraterrestrials, UFOs, and secret bases. She knows full well. And so this testimony I found was a man who was working during a very, very busy time in the government's history when Nixon was not in office yet. But I'm going to share my screen with you guys again so you can see what I'm looking at. And I'm going to play you something so you can hear his testimony. This is from an anonymous whistleblower. He briefed Eisenhower. Nixon was lurking in the shadows. Piece of shit that he is. 1959. And this was, this dude, I love this guy because you can tell while he's talking, this was just part of his job at the time, which is insane. Okay. So I want to skip right to this recording. So there's Eisenhower and Nixon. And I'm going to skip about 4 minutes in, and I want you to hear what this man says.
So I have a feeling that Eisenhower kept Nixon out of the loop. When I mentioned the German craft, Eisenhower did not question it, so he already had known about the German space program, who knows how long before.
Did Anthony say anything?
Anthony said, yes, I agree, this resembles the German crafts from Argentina.
And Eisenhower doesn't pick up on this and talk about, do we know anything more?
The only thing he said was, we have ships down in the area. The CIA have any knowledge about how many of these crafts are being reported coming out of Argentina? And we gave him that report that we had gotten, that our naval vessels had radar screen contacts of saucers coming in from outer space and going into around the crest to the South Polar regions, and also coming in and down into the Argentine area.
This is Eisenhower saying this.
That was part of a report that we had, and that we had radar contacts.
When you said that,
Eisenhower says, that is to be expected. We expected this. It's something he was already familiar with. He may have gotten a report from CIA headquarters on something like that when it first came out.
or from the National Security Council,
Yeah.
from the Majestic 12 people.
Yeah, everything that was reported always mentioned Majestic 12.
Did Eisenhower ever reference Majestic 12?
Yes. At one time, we were looking at the different photographs, and he mentioned he had told Nixon, this looks familiar. It was an aerial shot over the Netherlands, he said. Contact Majestic on this, he said. Verify if this is the very same thing that they had sent 3 months ago.
And did Nixon respond?
Yeah, he said, okay, I'll do this.
Did anybody ever explain why majestic, why the term majestic?
We knew it was a term for the original people that were digging into the flying saucer episodes.
It sounds like there were parallel tracks of intelligence, and that Majestic would have been working through the NSC.
Yeah.
CIA would have been doing its intelligence, the FBI doing its intelligence, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and that all these parallel tracks, and sometimes investigating each other. And I know that Navy has tried to get into CIA files. I've talked with a man who said how hard they tried and how they were blocked. Did Eisenhower in that meeting say anything about an understanding about whether or not he was perceiving that there was ally or threat or any interpretation?
No. In fact, Nixon said that Eisenhower had just told him that we're not gaining enough ground on this thing, that we need new blood, especially the Air Force.
Did Eisenhower in this meeting in the spring of 1959, is that when he said that he didn't understand why no one was getting to the bottom?
That was a quote. I had mentioned earlier that it was Nixon that said Ike is really disappointed in this thing, and that he said that we need new blood involved in this thing to try to move it along, because we're not really accomplishing that much.
Okay, so listen. The point that I love to make about this is not only is this man simply recounting something that happened a long time ago, but you got to understand that at this point in time, he was also diagnosed with cancer, and he didn't know how long he was going to live. He had called Linda Moulton Howe 5 years before that, but then he never showed up. And then when he resurfaced to visit her and finally made a recording with her, it was because he was dying, and he wanted to come clean. And that's the amazing thing about Linda, is she has a way of gaining the trust of a lot of military whistleblowers, a lot of CIA, FBI, I think, people who took that route. And as you can see, this was excerpts, a 3-day interview from him in his Florida home, June 1998, about his Washington D.C. trip in 1959. She asked him, because she wanted to know something that was always of interest to her, if these beings or what they were detecting was a threat. And this man said no. It was not a threat. Now, if he was lying and sensationalizing, why would he tell this story about Nixon and Eisenhower and talk about how disappointed they were that nothing interesting was happening, that they were just seeing more and more activity? Why wouldn't he say, yeah, wouldn't he sensationalize the part that everyone wants to know about the alien threat? Especially if he was working as a plant for the government, that's what he would sensationalize. That's what he would propagandize. So in my opinion, this man is sincere. He was dying. And I believe him. I think he's absolutely just recounting another day at work, which is fucking crazy because that's the real X-Files right there, baby. Anyway, so testimony is important. And we live in a society and we have established authority and structure so that unfortunately, it takes a fatal diagnosis for somebody to come forward and say, you know what, I'm not going to be scared anymore. I'm going to tell people the truth, and that's fucking sad. It's really sad, but that's the world we live in, and that's the country we live in. And that's what you need to understand. All this stuff. It's not. Are there things that are completely fabricated? Yeah, but there's also things that have deep roots and real evidence in history, and this is one of those subjects. So back to what I was saying now, the Fourth Reich. Okay, now we're going to travel back in time to World War II, because in the final months of the Second World War, there was a last desperate gamble by a megalomaniac Nazi leadership that could not accept the inevitable defeat. And actually, this gamble actually worked. They were holding. It was, in fact, a holding action for a methodically well-planned extraction of Nazis' most valued resources and personnel to already very well-prepared remote locations in Antarctica and South America, particularly Argentina. Okay? I just told you about the radar reports that this man was reporting all the way up to 1959 to Nixon and to Eisenhower. And that's what happened at the end of World War I. Okay, so I want to show you guys some of the prints that we found, right? Some of the documents recovered. All right, and I also want to show you some more whistleblower testimony, because you got to understand how long this is going on and how long the United States have been working on projects like this, and what we learned during Operation Paperclip. Because Operation Paperclip originally, was our idea. We were going to go in there and stomp out the Germans. We had no idea the technology that they had developed in just a short time and the protection they'd come under, because there was already a civilization living under there. In fact, there was more than one. And the more you delve into this, the more this is going to become clear to you. If you dive down this rabbit hole and you do your homework and you research what has been said and what has been made note of, then you're going to see and you're going to learn. And the more sources you pull from, the bigger picture you're going to have. But it's all going to say the same thing. You're not going to come up short and say, oh, you know what? Now that I've really looked at it, I realized nothing's there. No, you're going to come back and say, wow, what's there is more than I can explain and more than most people are ever going to believe, because there's more than one civilization, and that entire part of the world, like most of the earth, is a beehive. It's a honeycomb, cavern after cavern, and it goes miles down. It's a whole nother world, or two or three. And so I'm going to show you guys the Haunebu, the crafts that the Germans were developing, because they were communicating with people who were living underground in Antarctica, and they had the plans. And those plans for the craft were channeled by Maria Orsic, who was in touch telepathically with someone from living under the ice and in Antarctica. And I'm going to show you guys the physical manifestations of the craft that, of course, the Germans then tried to take and turn into war machines. But the Thule Society was adamant about not letting it fall into Hitler's hands. That part of the agreement that they made was that this would not be allowed to be weaponized. Of course, Hitler tried to weaponize it anyway, but he never did succeed, or, obviously the war might have turned out differently. He tried, and we found some of his experiments. They were for shit, but the ideas were amazing. And it was the ideas that made us go to Antarctica in Operation High Jump. Okay. So before we continue, let's do this. So William Tompkins is another whistleblower, and he corroborates a lot of this. He had a long-standing naval career. He designed advanced vehicles for some of the most, oh my God, like well-funded, advanced aerospace companies on the planet, including TRW, North American Aviation, Northrop, and Douglas, and a few others. He even assisted the Saturn and Apollo space programs for NASA, which would have probably been hilarious for him, considering what he was limited in using. But I want you to hear what he has to say. I'm going to share my screen again so you can hear this man's testimony. Now, this is not a crazy old man. This is just an old man who is at the end of his life. He died not long after this testimony, but he was brave enough to come forward. Check this out.
So we had a young girl, Nordic, just outside of Germany. Some people talked to her, and they said, you are now involved in a new program, and you're going to have great support in this program. She had developed I think she had 8 girls. They were continually talked to telepathically to go and design spaceships. The little blonde actually built them. And eventually 2 of those got over here in Area 51. But Germany found out about the blonde, took her over, stopped everything, and then got to this point where there was some sort of pressurized program by the SS to control that original group. Now, several times they did work together, but Hitler allowed them to operate independently of the whole SS program, the whole development. So we had 2 developments going on in Germany. The girls didn't want their vehicles to be used for anything else but travel. They were afraid that somebody would get a hold of it and they use it for military, which is, of course, what they got. But the girls finally ended up in Antarctica in the large facilities. In fact, the reptilians had 3 massive caverns. They let Germany use 2 small ones. But when you're talking about small, it's like as big as California. And so there's cities in both the extraterrestrial caverns and manufacturing everything that you would need on a planet. So then Hitler's group did the same thing. 4 years before the war was over, it was decided that the war could possibly be lost, but if we win it, we still need to get out of the area because the Allies are going to bomb us off of the Earth and there won't be anything here left for us. So they decided to move everything to Antarctica. Admiral Byrd, they're going to down there and they were going to take out the whole thing in 1 week. The top people in every area of the Navy, best aircraft, best ships, best weapons,
Operation
everything.
High Jump.
And 5 weeks later, things didn't look very good. When we got down there, they had decided they were going to have one thrust from the west side of Antarctica and then the opposite side coming into both of them towards the center of the continent. And so before we even got all the guys around, and I'm talking about big 4-engine flying boats, okay, and ships. battleships and destroyers and submarines and you name it. Before they got there, these fairly large, they were 100-foot diameter saucers, came up out of the ocean and took down everything. Now, there's a misnomer on some documentations about the pictures of the photographs of some of the German UFOs. Many of the close-ups give you a real clear picture of the cross on them.
There's one.
What was partially incorrect in that information that's been released was that not all of the vehicles came out from the German side to take out ours, but from the large caverns on the adjacent to them, unmarked UFOs and unmarked cigars came up, which then it was a joint venture by the extraterrestrials that lived there, operated from there, and built the vehicles that went to the moon and Mars and all these other places. But we lost that war.
We sure did lose that war. This is a more modern whistleblower for you, so you understand just how much has been kept, and that, yeah, the old guy's got a bad toupee. He's dying. Okay, cut him some slack. He worked at all those places. His naval career is not in dispute. His employment at these massive advanced aerospace companies and think tanks is not in dispute. Okay, you can debate his, how sane he is until the cows come home, but he was there everywhere he said he was. He was there. So you can't debate where he worked. You can't debate the things that he says that were happening, because that's his experience. And he didn't live long after he gave this testimony. Now, here's another Navy SEAL whistleblower who ended up in Antarctica, very, very scared to come forward. Finally, he got one of the people who was with him to come forward, and they went to Linda Moulton Howe. Now, listen to this. More testimony, whistleblower testimony about Antarctica.
They recently went back. Recently, I say recently, it was in the late 1950s, early 1960s. This coalition that I talk about is Great Britain, United States, France, Germany, Canada, Russia. There has been a space fleet in existence for the last 25 years.
When you say space fleet, who is paying for and operating?
All of this coalition countries.
Can you name the very specific part of Antarctica?
We were held as a blacklist. We were not told the exact location. We were given a latitude, but not a longitude. The compound was in 3 stages, hidden under the ice. Each door was the same, anywhere from 18 feet thick to around 30 feet thick. I did not have standard hinges like what we see today on the door. It's not on a frame to the side. They were on pivots, one at the very top and one at the bottom. And even though these doors were that thick and that heavy, you could take one finger and push them and they would open. There was no resistance whatsoever.
What about the ceilings, hallways, floors?
As far as walking into certain rooms of the lower structures, the light automatically turns on. The walls themselves were anywhere from 18 feet thick to 30 feet thick. And that was from both the base to the ceiling. It was lighted from the inside, but we could not find the source of light. It was a lime green in color.
A lime green?
Yes, ma'am.
What of this room would glow lime green in Antarctica?
The walls themselves looked like it was backlit from the base of the floor or the top of the ceiling. It would look like somebody had put a light under a cabinet to hide the light. You could see the light itself, but you could not see the light fixture. There were no lamps, no bulbs, no wires of any kind. These structures, once you got inside, the outside temperature was at least 40 degrees below zero. Once you stepped inside these structures, the temperature was an ambient 68 to 72 degrees. No outside generators. The people that were there were not heating these structures. They had no means to. They were only there to take photographs, take analysis of the structure, find out what they could.
How much did the man who took the photos say? How big was this facility?
This one facility, there was more than one. The one that we were at stretched almost over 62 acres.
62?
Yes, ma'am. The majority of it was under the ice. Ceilings were around 22 to 28 feet in height. The walls were lined with what I call hieroglyphics.
That's a Thule Society.
But nothing of hieroglyphics that I've ever seen in my life. They did not look Egyptian. They were not Mayan, but they looked similar to both. The only thing that I myself could tell from one of the panels that was on the walls would look like a star map or a star chart.
The door.
The door itself is 17.5 feet wide, 18 feet thick, 23 feet tall.
And that's the one with the black sun carved into it?
Yes, ma'am.
You opened that door.
That's the black sun right there. Now, you know where else you can find the black sun, my friends? 2019, the United States government declared part of the Ukraine's army to be Nazi neo-Nazis. They use the Thule sun. Fascinating, isn't it? So I want to keep going. There's massive amount of testimony. That's from an Amazon documentary Linda Moulton Howe did. And I'll include the name of it in the description, but I think it's called Antarctica, Alien Bases or Hidden. And when I told you guys there's more than one civilization, it's because there is more than one civilization. They've been here much longer than we have. And the Germans who fled there were helped by, the civilization that adopted them and what they had developed since. And that's why Operation High Jump essentially was the United States capitulation to the strong remnant of the German party, which was also in part Nazi. Okay. And everything in the United States became about whatever we need to do to get our hands on this technology, because without it, they didn't see how the United States could be the dominant force on the planet. And their assessment wasn't wrong. It was just incredibly selfish and just self-centered. And it involved, the continued monopolization of energy, fossil fuels, and industry. And the Germans who had joined the breakaway society already living there were more than happy to piggyback the United States industrial might in order to continue on in America. And so when you hear people saying, we didn't actually win that war, it's because of this. It's because of Operation Paperclip. We adopted 1,500 high-ranking Nazi scientists and generals because we wanted this technology. And those people, they had fled the war. And that's why the Nuremberg trials, in large part, were a joke. Nobody took a true fall. Every general that they convicted, they were second rate. All the top brass fled, and they got away, including Hitler. And if I was one of the people who just thought that was the craziest, funniest conspiracy of all time, that Hitler got away. And then I discovered this. I'm going to share with you guys a fucking picture of Adolf Hitler that was found in CIA records in Argentina, where they had evacuated him to, where he got away from. You can see that it is Hitler. And why did the CIA save this picture and make a record of it? I think he was in vacationing in Colombia. Of course, no one probably looked twice at this dude, because who would ever think that or believe that Adolf Hitler was actually still alive? Everybody believed the propaganda. But when I found this picture, I thought, son of a bitch, that conspiracy theory about Hitler not having killed himself but had actually, gotten away is probably true. Why else would the CIA have a picture of him filed away? And why else would they not do anything about it? The CIA was formed to handle all this. Now, anyway, still more evidence, okay? All of this is corroborated by Germany's Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, and he bragged about the remote base in Antarctica on 3 separate occasions on record. What was he talking about? Was he just making things up? How is it that people still imagine this is conspiracy? What planet do you live on? How do you spend your life living in denial, of facts, of records, of actual physical evidence? I don't understand. Okay. He bragged about the remote base on Antarctica on 3 separate occasions and how it would provide a safe haven for Hitler if it ever required it. Well, I guess it required it because he seemed to get him out there, and then I guess he made his way to Argentina because it's connected underground. You can get from Antarctica to Argentina. It's all connected. Hello. In 1943, Dönitz is reported to have made his first statement, and he said, and I quote, "The German submarine," this is translated obviously, "the German submarine fleet is proud of having built for the Führer in another part of the world a Shangri-La on land, an impregnable fortress." The second occasion was in 1944, when he revealed how plans were in place to relocate Hitler so he could launch a new effort for his 1,000-year Reich. He said, and I quote, "The German Navy will have to accomplish a great task in the future. The German Navy knows all hiding places in the oceans, and therefore it will be very easy to bring the Führer to a safe place should the necessity arise in which he will have the opportunity to work out his final plans." That's Dönitz's reference to the German Navy's knowledge of all hiding places in the oceans, showing once again how central the Navy was to the entire Antarctica operation. Finally, Dönitz remarks at his Nuremberg war crime trial on record clearly. He identified Antarctica as the place where Germany's most advanced technologies had been secretly relocated by the Navy's large submarine fleet. At the trial, he boasted of an invulnerable fortress, a paradise-like oasis in the middle of eternal ice. Those were the cryptic words he used. What was he talking about? That's from the Nuremberg trial. Not a secret. Not a secret. Not a conspiracy theory. What compounded the realization of the Nazi elite of their exodus to Antarctica for the Allies, for us, was evidence that the Thule Society had been successful in contacting these ET races, and that they were in touch with an advanced human civilization that was living inside Earth's interior. Imagine their shock. Okay? Nazi cooperation with extraterrestrial life or ancient interior Earth civilizations was a big factor in the Allies pursuing and eradicating the remnants of the Nazis of Germany who had relocated to Antarctica. Okay? The Thule Society saucer program had achieved operational success well before the Nazi defeat, but they were keeping it from the Nazis. Like you heard Bill Tompkins say, they did not want those two intermingling, and they were probably given that as a stipulation for the plans they received. Now, Orsic had ensured the Vril program would not be associated with the war effort, so it was possible that they moved most of their technologies and infrastructure and personnel to safe locations in Antarctica. I have more testimony about Vril. So, after that, Hitler outlawed secret societies, but an exception was made for the Vril Society, of course, which had inspired the creation of the Black Sun Society, which was formed under Himmler's SS. Weird, the Black Sun, huh? What was the insignia on that door? Hello. This is what Peter Moon, he's author of a book called The Black Sun, made this Nazi-Tibetan connection. The Vril Society began around the same time as the Thule Society. And we can go into that, but that's certainly something you want to look into. The history of the black sun. Okay, so Navy SEAL testimony, Operation High Jump. Now, High Jump, in an effort to locate and take over and destroy the Nazi Antarctica bases, Rear Admiral Byrd was giving his marching orders in 1946, 1947. All right. Operation High Jump was named. 4,700 military personnel, 6 helicopters, 6 Martin PBM flying boats, 2 seaplane tenders, 15 other aircraft, 13 U.S. Navy support ships, and 1 aircraft carrier, the USS Philippine Sea. Byrd received both classified and unclassified orders, as is customary on these missions. General public was told that the unclassified reason for this expedition was released, and it said that its purpose was largely scientific in terms of exploring, mapping, and finding locations for future U.S. bases in Antarctica. That's what the public was told. The unclassified science excuse for the expedition. It was a strategic cover for its critical classified naval armada, which was being sent not to conduct a science mission, but a military expedition. That's why you send all those military things. My God, I guess the public was just as stupid then as it is today. The Byrd mission was scheduled to last up to 6 months. 6-month expedition they packed for, okay? It ended in less than 8 weeks. Why? If it was a science expedition, why would it end after 8 weeks? What could have happened? Skeptics. Stupid skeptics. Now, according to an initial Chilean press report, the mission had run into trouble and there had been many fatalities. That was the initial reports, because the first place they came through on their way back with their tail between their legs after they got their asses kicked was Chile. Okay? And Chile was like, what the fuck? They wanted interviews. And listen, my friends, always look at the interviews after an event that are taken immediately and put out before they can be edited, before the witnesses can be, forced into recanting and changing their story. Those are the strongest sources of information you'll find about an event. And when they vary from that and those start to disappear, that's when you can be suspicious for good reason. Okay. Now, if it's true that the goal of the mission was to locate and eradicate Nazi bases, the press reports and the early end of the mission indicate a complete failure and a rude awakening for the U.S. Navy. All right? The most commonly cited source for learning the truth behind the early end of Operation High Jump is an actual interview that Admiral Byrd gave to a journalist whose name was Lee Van Etta, and she lived in Chile as well. He was traveling back. Okay. Van Etta's article has many significant direct quotes from Byrd, suggesting he was eager to reveal the truth, and it was obviously muzzled by Washington the moment he got home. But I have a picture of that article. If you're looking at it, you can see it. It is not translated. It is in Spanish, obviously, but it is extensive. Okay, so there's that. Now, let me tell you what it says. It deserves close scrutiny, citing Byrd because these give the most accurate and honest assessment of what actually took place. Okay, it appeared March 5th, 1947, and the name of the paper was El Mercurio. Here's a translation, okay, for my listeners. Admiral Richard E. Byrd refers to the strategic importance of the poles. What follows are translated passages from the original Spanish release, and I quote, Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today of the necessity for the United States to adopt protective measures against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile aircraft, UFOs. Those ships, back to the quote, aircraft proceeding from the polar regions. Byrd said, and I quote, I do not want to scare anybody, but the bitter reality is that in the event of a new war, the United States will be attacked by aircraft flying in from over one or both of the poles. End quote. This specific passage is the source of the original theory, which proposed that the South and North Poles were the locations where a new enemy existed, capable of initiating a new war, and the United States did not want to get their ass kicked in a new war. So what did they do? It finishes with, on the subject of the recently terminated expedition, Byrd said that, quote, the most important of the observations and discoveries made of the present potential situation as it relates to the security of the United States, I can do no more than warn my countrymen very forcibly that the time has passed when we could take refuge in complete isolation and rest in confidence in the guarantee of security which distance, the oceans and the poles provide. Now, why would he say that? Why would he say that? What happened in Antarctica on the science expedition to make Admiral Byrd say this in clear consternation to this reporter in Chile? Clearly, he was shaken by what he had saw. Okay? So, I want to point you guys, before I finish this presentation, to this incredible story about a letter. Okay? It's about one of the German U-boats that made it to New Schwabenland, whatever it's called, after World War II, after the German army had lost, and it's this incredible story which is backed up by some really hard evidence. It's a document that surfaced that was obtained by Joe Watson of Talkeetna, Alaska. And Mr. Watson claimed that it was a copy of a letter written on March 2nd, 1985, in the German language from a German submarine crewman who was on board. It is given certain coordinates for their mission, which apparently was to travel to the center of the Earth. And their submarine was called the U-209 under Captain Heinrich Brada. The image that I'm going to show you is a copy of the original handwritten letter from Carl Unger and from a crew member of the German U-boats, as well as an English translation. In it, Carl confirmed that the Earth was indeed hollow and that they successfully reached the inner inhabited Earth in the German U-209 submarine boat after World War II had destroyed Germany. So you can look at that. For my listeners, I'm sorry, you'll have to check out the video. But the letter was sent to his friend here on the surface world, who gave a copy of it to Mr. Woodward, and they gave a copy of it to Joe Watson. Carl had sent the letter from Hollow Earth through a German colony in Brazil that had found a cavern that reaches to the hollow part of the civilization. This German colony in Brazil is documented in a book called Genesis for a New Age. And that supposedly, it dates back all the way back the cavern entrance to the 1500s. Now, when one does a search at the German archive website looking for information on the missing U-209 German submarine, it shows that the submarine was indeed reported missing. On July 5th, 1943, was the last reported position between Greenland and Iceland. The report said that the commander of the submarine was Heinrich Brada. In addition, documents obtained by the Soviets at the close of World War II recently surfaced, which shows a 1944 map of the Third Reich detailing not only the direct passageway used by German U-boats to access the subterranean domain, but also a complete map of both hemispheres of the inner realm of Agartha, as it's called, which was the mythical name for the subterranean world, and the other one, which I think was called, it was like a Nordic mythology name. But this, and then I have more information about the Hitler photo. But you guys, if you look that up, you can find that too. It's a crazy story. I hope I've inspired you to learn more about Antarctica, to learn more about the secret space programs that have been going on for decades and decades, and the technology that's being hidden. If you guys want to learn more, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please check me out on Instagram. My Instagram name is Faust Checho. I talk about these subjects often. I talk about the technology being hidden and why. Because it's not really about hiding ET from you. It's about hiding the way that ET got here from you so that you continue to have to pay gas, electric, and participate in fake energy crises for no reason. It's always, always, always about greed and power when it comes to government. Nothing else. They could care less whether you know about ET. But for everyone who has stayed with me this long, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And if you look in the video description, we'll include links to a lot of the references I made, a lot of the sources, all the sources of the videos, and some fantastic reading material for you, which I garnered a lot of my information from and continue to. Thank you so much for joining. And if you like this episode and you like this kind of the solo presentation of information like this, just let me know in the comments, please, and like the video and share it. And I'm happy to do it again. We'll see how it goes over. God bless you all. Question and the answers, my friends.